Hello and welcome to Trusts and Estates Weekly, one of the Way to Wow shows. I'm your host, Kevin Bemmel, and we are here at 10 a.m. Pacific time every Monday to talk about those things related to estate planning and managing trusts, estates, handling the closing of probates and estates, all of those things that go on to prepare for our eventual and inevitable demise, right? Not necessarily a heartwarming subject, but one of the realities of life. As we head toward the end of the year, and we interact with relatives more frequently, perhaps, I thought this would be a propitious time to talk about dealing with the conflicts that sometimes arise when it comes time for estate planning or estate settlement. And so let me bring up my screen. Here we go. And there it is. Okay. And see, we've got a new opening slide here. I've been uh, making my images and branding more consistent across both the shows and social media and such. So you'll see this on my website now. You'll see it on all of the emails and such for the show. So we're going to talk about inheritance and family dynamics, how to handle sensitive issues. Okay, and this you see here a multi-generational family, by the way. I think these are the parents and grandparents, and these, I'm not sure if these, or maybe these are all children, but he kind of looks like a grandchild, and they look maybe a little bit too young to have a child that old, but somehow this seems sort of multi-generational. So, in any event, this is the reality of of estate plannings and blink, and there we are on our next slide. So everything we do on the Way to Wow shows relates to the three pillars of attainment. And if you are new to the shows, so I invite you to go to our YouTube channel, and there's a whole show talking about what's behind the three pillars of attainment. And it really comes down to a way of organizing our lives, ourselves, our relationships, and the things we do, pursuits. On this show, we deal primarily with finances, okay? But of course, today we're going to be dealing a lot with relationships as well, and also with ourselves. So oftentimes, the three pillars mesh, and many of the realms come into play together. So here's the challenge that comes with family dynamics. And I've broken them down into three. There's different ways of describing these, but we really what we're looking to do is get at their root. The first one is unresolved issues. So oftentimes between family members, there are things that have gone on over the years, and they have never been worked out. There may be family members who are estranged from each other. And by the way, this is not to imply that the issues are not legitimate. Many times there are legitimate reasons for these issues, and there may be good reasons why they remain unresolved. It's just when we deal with our estate planning and estate settlement, if there are unresolved issues, then those need to be taken into account in order to reduce, minimize their impact on what happens after we die. Okay, so that's one thing. These, you might call these, old conflicts, if you will, as contrasted with new conflicts. So new conflicts can be things that have happened recently or that are happening as a result of the estate planning process. So you would think, well, wait, how can there be conflict as a result of essentially planning for people to, inherit my wealth, or, you're helping a client, pass their wealth on. But I assure you, there are lots of grounds for conflicts. We'll talk about some of these as the show proceeds. But indeed, the whole process of planning and settlement can cause conflicts. Sometimes they're an extension of unresolved issues. Other times they're just conflicts that come up as a result of what's going on. Okay, and then finally, there are unexpected emotions. So I think oftentimes we many of us, I think me included in this, we don't well, we're unprepared for what goes on when a death in our families occurs, and all of a sudden we're faced with this ending, if you will, and it brings up an emotional response that surprises us. And that can lead to other unexpected results. So all of that can then play into the whole process of doing our estate planning and estate settlement. And indeed, by the way, the unexpected emotions can arise even in the planning stage, where it may seem like, well, look, it makes sense. My parents have to plan for when they're no longer here, but then really thinking about what that means can be very upsetting. So I've a very close friend who is dealing with that now. He His father recently passed away, and his father had been declining and wasn't particularly well, and he certainly was very sad over that. But I think it didn't ambush him. What did ambush him is the thought that, gosh, what's going to happen when my mother dies? And I think he was a little bit surprised at how that hit him. And with good reason. These are difficult things to think about. So unexpected emotions can also impact family dynamics. Okay, let's. Okay. Oh, you know what? I realized I'm gonna talk about some of what these issues might be. So let's go back now to unresolved issues. So um, not typical, but a type of unresolved issue could be feelings on the part of one child that his parents always favored one of his siblings. Or it could be that he felt favored by his parents and may feel guilty about that. And it's never been dealt with. Okay. And by the way, just because he feels guilty about it doesn't mean that there's any basis for the guilt. The other children, his siblings, they may have recognized that he was the favored child, and they may feel like, well, there was a good reason for that, and it is kind of is what it is, but it's no big deal from our perspective. But the one who's feeling guilty isn't aware of how his siblings feel. Maybe he's never addressed the issue to them. And so you've got this sort of unresolved conflict going on. And in this case, it's really only from one child's perspective, but nonetheless, it can cloud the whole process. Okay. And look, there are issues between children and parents. There are issues regarding how money is handled. And all of these can go on for years, indeed decades, without there being any substantial resolution to them. And then, now you're either going through the estate planning process, and you're getting pushback that you don't anticipate, or you're gone, and now your heirs are going through settling the estate, and these unresolved issues are causing conflicts, and everybody, well, not, I mean, everybody, including the person who's the source of the conflict, may be sort of mystified as to why this is, so bumpy, if you will, because sometimes we're not even aware that we have these issues. They're so a part of us that, until we do some very sort of focused thinking and digging, we don't realize, the dynamics that we're involved with, and that we're causing. Okay. Now, new conflicts could be things like, let's say that, let's use a husband. His wife dies, and he has three children from the first marriage. And then, several years later, he gets remarried, and the woman he marries has three children from her prior marriage. I know that's pretty wild these days. Three children, whoa. But didn't used to be so unusual. My parents had three children. I'm the middle. So you know, and let's say that the man had, some substantial assets, and the woman he married didn't really have any, or doesn't really have anything substantial financially. Okay, and yet, now they're married, they're a couple, and they're, you have this sort of blended family, and the children of the husband may feel like the new children are interlopers, in the sense that, they're not related to their father. Why should they get a share of their father's wealth? On the other hand, the father may feel that it would be wrong, it would be, unkind or ungenerous to leave his new wife's children, out of their estate plan, and he doesn't want to insult them, and he feels that it's the right thing to do. Or he may, look, presumably he loves this woman that he married, and he may just flat out feel this is the right thing to do. They're, her children are my children, and vice versa, and we're going to do our best to treat them as such. And so, share and share alike. So how the parents are viewing it and how the children view it can create a new conflict, and that can make this whole thing more difficult. And you know probably the worst result is that the parents would do their estate plan, and then that, they die, and now all of a sudden the children are faced with this situation that, at least half of them perhaps think is wrong, and the other three are going, wait a minute, we had nothing to do with this. This is what our parents wanted. Why are we being, blamed or held responsible for something that we had nothing to do with? Oh, yes, you did. You swayed him, or your mother swayed them, and but how these things can go. So these kind of new conflicts can come up as well. Okay, and then I talked about unexpected emotions. So all of these create a very significant opportunity for there to be conflict, and while it's hopefully going to be hard enough on your heirs when you pass away, you know it would be even worse if these conflicts sort of, explode into, hostility, et cetera, et cetera. They, people then they won't, they don't feel like they can attend the funeral because these other people are there, and on and on and on and on. I mean, these, I'm sure you're aware of how these kind of family conflicts can sort of, run away. All right, so how do we deal with them? I'm going to give you a couple of suggestions or a couple of ideas on what to do. And when I say you, both you, if you're planning your or involved in the planning of your own estate, and also you as in terms of professionals who are helping people create estate plans. If you've been at this for a long time, you probably are using these suggestions. If you're newer to the estate planning and estate settlement realm. So these are really skills that I highly recommend you develop. And I think you will find that they're going to be useful really throughout your lives. These are in this first one, I'm going to talk about communication, right? This is a fundamental relationship skill. Okay, now people talk about, relationships are all about communication. Well, I don't agree with that. To be candid, relationships aren't about communication. Relationships are about relationships. They're about commitment. That's what. And there was a paper that I read written by, I believe it was a psychologist at Liberty University, who studied marital conflict among veterans. And the conclusion of the paper was that the marriages that did not do well were the ones who did not see the marriage in the context of it being a commitment. Okay, so, two people can be communicating completely clearly. They can understand each other very well. That doesn't mean that the relationship is going to survive. So I don't want you to fall into the trap of thinking, well, as long as I'm communicating clearly, my job is done. No, that is not the case at all. Okay. It's just most of the time, clearing up conflicts, misunderstandings in relationships and avoiding them will start with communication. Okay. Communication that's open, honest, and empathetic. Okay. So let's talk about each one of these three qualities so we make sure that we understand each other. Open communication means you're sharing all that there is to be shared. Okay. You're not sort of selectively saying this or that, so that in the end, although you've communicated, the person with whom you're communicating ends up being misled because you've left things out or they've left things out. Okay. So communication should be open. It should also be honest. Okay. Now, it can be difficult. We talk about honesty, and I'm not of the school that 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 truth is sort of fungible. No, there is absolute truth. Okay. Having said that, um, we can only be as honest as we understand what's going on. Okay. So when I say being honest with ourselves and honest with the person to whom we're communicating. Okay. So um it it will it, sometimes honesty requires a qualifier. And in fact, you probably hear me do this on occasion. I'll say, X, Y, and Z. Well, at least that's how I perceive it. Okay. I keep open the possibility that maybe I'm misperceiving something. And so my perception of the truth is skewed. Okay. So that's part of open and honest, right? In order for communication to be honest, I think we need to leave open at least a smidgen that maybe I'm misunderstanding something, maybe I'm misperceiving something. And so, with additional information, perhaps my view of what's true will be altered. Okay. And finally, empathetic. And I, I, I approach this. I'll be honest. I'm a little bit leery of using this word empathetic because it's so overused today. And in fact, sometimes being empathetic, that is, being open and absorbing of another person's feelings, can actually be um, um, counterproductive in resolving conflict. Okay, so empathy needs to be exercised in a judicious way. Having said that, when we talk about open, honest, empathetic communication, what I mean is not use being open and honest as a way to beat the other person up. And I see this I saw this quite often in my work counseling people as a chaplain in the U.S. Navy. So people would tell the truth in a way that was like a club that they were beating the other person with. Okay, that is completely counterproductive. It may be honest, okay, but to what end? Okay, so the person would say, well, my spouse is evil and this and that, and it's like whack whack whack. I mean, maybe all of those are true, okay, but the way we express honesty is as important as that we speak with honesty. Okay. And if we want another person to be able to really hear what we're saying, attacking them is not the way to go. Okay. So when I say empathetic communication, what I mean is communicating in a way that's most likely to be heard. Okay. So you don't necessarily need to take the emotions of the other person on board per se, but take into account how might my words impact the person whom I'm talking to, their ability to really hear what I'm saying and absorb it and understand it. Okay. In the absence of that third quality of communication, it's unlikely that you're going to get clear communication because the person that you're speaking to is going to reject what you're saying because of the way you're saying it. Okay. It's most of us struggle to rise above being attacked. Okay, especially while the attack's going on. Now, maybe after we disengage, we calm down, we're able to separate the attack from what was actually said. But even then, it can be very, very difficult. And we're only making achieving resolution more difficult. Okay. So open, honest, empathetic communication will go a long way towards setting the foundation on which resolution of potential conflicts or of existing conflicts can be reached. Okay, next, start early in the process. Okay, so maybe you already have your estate plan done, and now you're coming to the realization maybe there are some conflicts there. Well, okay, it frankly probably would have been better if you'd started dealing with potential conflicts prior to actually creating your plan. But okay, you didn't. But that would have been the best way. Okay. Now that you have a plan, start now and recognize that you may need to make some alterations in your estate plan now that you've started working on these conflicts and hopefully have worked them through at least to some kind of resolution. Okay. The best way, though, is to talk with the potential heirs and beneficiaries before you start setting pen to paper and understand the family dynamics before you start making firm decisions. I mean, you're probably going to have some ideas about what you want to do, but do some listening and some gathering of information and engage in some understanding of what the dynamics are as early in the process as you can, because that way you hopefully won't need to make changes down the road if had these things been overlooked and now they've got to be dealt with later in the process. Okay, next, listen actively and confirm understanding. So this is a very standard communication technique. When you're actively listening, we're keeping our mouths shut and our ears open, and we're focusing on what the person is saying and doing our best to really understand what they're trying to tell us. And it typically listening actively, confirm understanding typically is a bit of a back and forth process where someone says something to you, and then at some point they may go on to their next point, and you gently say, before you move on to your next point, I'd like to make sure that I understand what you've just told me. So here's what I heard. Now, you don't necessarily want to repeat the same words back to them because, unless that's the only way you can think of to describe what they've said, but you want to describe it in your own words so that it comports with your understanding and see if the two of you have a meeting of the minds. If you don't, there's no reason to go on to the next point until you've got the understanding of this issue first. Okay. And so even if the conversation ends up only coming to terms with one issue, but you're able to confirm, both parties are able to confirm, or all parties are able to confirm that they really understand each other on that issue, that's far more productive than covering 5 issues where people are assuming they understand each other, but they don't really know. And in fact, probably maybe don't understand each other or not nearly as well as they need to reach resolution. Okay. So you want to practice that active listening and confirming understanding. Okay. Finally, set clear expectations. So as you move on to creating your estate plan, or if this is in this already in the settlement process, settling the estate, set clear expectations. Okay, so there may be an heir who is financially in a very difficult situation. They need money right away, but it may not be practical to do that. Maybe there's a will, it needs to go through probate. All these things need to be approved by the court. Okay, and so as the executor, you don't have the authority to just write the beneficiary or write the heir a check. Okay, in fact, that would be considered a breach of your fiduciary duty. And so from the outset, wherever you are in the planning and execution process or planning and settlement process, be set as clear expectations as you can. Okay, and that may involve saying to someone, look, I'm not a professional at this, so I'm not even sure how all of this works. So before I make any promises to you or tell you what's going to happen, I need to figure that out. And that's going to take some time. I may need several weeks to figure this out. I'm sorry, I know you're in a difficult situation, but I can't proceed until I'm clear about what I need to do. And I don't want to make any mistakes and cause problems down the road. And so, again, I understand that you're in a bad place, please understand that I have to handle things properly. Okay, so set those clear expectations. Another clear expectation, maybe in the planning process, may be, look, I going back to the example of the couple that got remarried with 3 children apiece, right? One of the expectations may be, look, we want to do our best to treat you all as justly as we can. But I think, given what we've heard in the various meetings that we've had, I just don't see a way where we're going to be able to make everyone happy. So I think you're just going to have to deal with the reality that we're going to do our best to get you part way there, but you're going to end up unhappy with some of the things that we decide. And, you're just going to have to live with that. It's not within our ability to make everyone in this situation happy, including ourselves. Okay. Because in the end, these are our decisions. This is what we want to do as your parents. And we have certain goals in mind, which we've talked to you about. They conflict with what you want. In the end, these are our decisions to make, and we are going to make the decisions. Understand that some of them will be upsetting to you. I need you to understand that there's only so much we can do in order to comply with your wishes. Okay, and so that way the heirs know going in, okay, I'm not going to get what I want. Now they may choose to be sulky or whatever. You know, you're not always going to be able to resolve every conflict. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of human interaction. Okay. Next, dealing with emotional dynamics. So the first step is to acknowledge the issues. Okay, so it's in the taking the example of the remarried couple, it's not going to do any good to hide from the fact that if there is conflict between the two groups of children, that it's there. Okay, just acknowledge it. I get it. Father, you, the children of me, the husband, you feel like since most of the money is mine, before I married my now wife, that you're entitled to all of that money. I understand that. I can understand why you would feel that way. Okay. Just understand that my wife and I, we don't share that outlook with you. Okay. And we don't want to create conflict, but we're all adults here. And so, let's acknowledge that the issue exists. Let's do our best to minimize the conflict that comes from it, and live our lives as free from conflict as possible. Okay. Next, understand individual needs. So, let's say that the children of the husband, generally speaking, are, they're just not as financially successful as the children of the wife. Okay, so maybe there is a pecuniary reason, that there is a financial reason why the husband's children should get more, in addition to the fact that it was his money. Okay, so if as you look at individual needs, that can also come into it. Maybe there's a special need child. Maybe one of the wife's children is a special needs person. And so, that person is going to need support his whole life. Well, so as much as the husband's children don't want to see money going to the wife's children, but the reality is, there is this special need on the part of one of them, and the parents, step parents, however you want to label them, they feel a genuine responsibility to provide for this individual need. Okay, so those should be looked at as well. And by understanding people as individuals and talking to them about their individual needs, okay, probably best done one-on-one, okay, not to cause conflict with others, at least initially having one-on-one conversations, okay, they can felt like their concerns have been heard, if not addressed, okay, and that can potentially lower the opportunity for conflict as well. Okay, finally, the conflicts may get to the point where you need some professional help in resolving the conflicts. Now, when I say you, let me emphasize, I'm talking about you who are planning your estates, but you may also be a professional helping them. So maybe you're a financial advisor and you're working with this couple on their estate plan and they've got these conflicts, and that's really not within your level of professional ability. So maybe you want to recommend, hey, I think we need to bring in a professional mediator to help deal with these types of conflicts. Okay, and that way someone is brought in who's completely neutral, okay, who can listen to all the parties and help them come to some sort of agreement. Now, I mean, potentially it could be, a psychologist or something like that. Generally speaking, though, you're going to want someone who's familiar with the kinds of issues that go on when an estate is being planned or when an estate is being settled. Okay, and there are professional mediators out there. Now, let me caution that there are a number of lawyers out there who double as mediators. Okay, mediation is a very special skill. Okay, just because someone has a law degree and maybe many, many years of practice as a lawyer does not mean that they're a competent mediator. Okay, so if you're considering a professional mediator, I encourage you to really dive down into their credentials. What makes them a professional mediator? What qualifies them as a professional mediator besides them self-identifying as one? Okay, and I can tell you, having dealt with them, there is a big, big difference between lawyers who mediate and people whose sole practice is mediation, or the majority of their practice is mediation. So I know a couple of professional mediators where that's really what they do. They are lawyers, but really mediation and the diffusing and working out of disputes, that's what they spend their professional time doing. And they have a very different perspective and ability to create agreement than lawyers who do it as an adjunct to their law practice. Okay. And by the way, you may also consider someone like me, a little bit of a commercial, I suppose, but I'm a professional fiduciary. Now, if I'm a fiduciary, of an estate, so then part of my job is going to be, if there's conflicts, to do my best to mediate them. However, there are times when I've considered bringing in a professional mediator where it was just beyond, I was not perceived as being neutral, or at least neutral enough to solve the conflict. In other cases, I'm working on a situation right now where I'm not the fiduciary involved in the estate, but there is conflict among the beneficiaries. And so, I've offered, this happens to be a friend of mine, I've offered to act as a mediator between him and his brothers, in helping sort of get it figured out in a way that will work best for all concerned. So that's not my primary business. It's just here I happen to know the dynamics pretty well, and it's a single issue conflict. Okay, but in any event, professional help may be a good way to go. And although obviously it'll cost some money, if it resolves conflicts well, it will save a lot of money down the road. Actually, we're way over time here, so I think I'm gonna get going. Let's see. Okay, so real quickly, just you want to plan and socialize. So you want to, first of all, you want to develop your plan. You want to get legal and financial advice, okay, as you're creating your plan. Okay. But as you're creating the plan, socialize it, meaning talk to the beneficiaries, talk to the heirs so that they understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. That can that can forestall conflicts down the road. Okay. You may also choose to build in some contingencies depending on circumstances that might happen after the plan is set. So you don't necessarily have to completely rework the plan. So let's say, for example, that you have this situation with the special needs child, okay, and maybe at the time, let's say it's a special needs grandchild, right? So the parents are taking care of him, okay, and while he's in the parents' care and custody, if you will, he's fine. But at the point where he hits adulthood and wants to live as independent a life as he can, so at that point, it may not be within the parents' ability to be able to help him financially enough to be able to do that. Okay. So in that case, maybe you want to have a contingency that says, this is what we're going to do for this grandchild up to the age of, 18. When the grandchild turns 18, we're going to do this other thing, because, in order to help him live more independently or something like that. So you can build some flexibility into your estate plan that will give your trustee or your executor, the court-appointed administrator, the opportunity to be able to have some leeway in working out what might become conflicts, as the estate is being settled. Okay, and then finally, be transparent. Okay, so this is the socialization process, if you will. And we hear this word transparent a lot these days. I think it's a somewhat overused term, but it is applicable in this case. So let the people who are going to be impacted by your estate plan, let them know what's going on so they're not surprised. Okay. One of the best ways to avoid conflict is to give people an opportunity to understand what's going to happen in advance of it happening and get used to the idea. Okay. And part of socializing your plan is explaining why you're doing it. Okay. And if there's a perceived slight to a particular heir or beneficiary, explaining, look, we're not meaning to slight you. And I understand from our conversations, you feel like you're entitled to a larger share. We balanced things out as well as we could, and that's how we came to these decisions. And we felt it was important that everybody be able to benefit no matter what the source of the wealth is. Okay. So again, be as open, be as transparent as you can be as far in advance of the plan having to be enacted, and that will give you the best shot at avoiding conflict and in terms of dealing with family dynamics. Okay, so that's what we've got today. We went kind of long today, almost 45 minutes, but hopefully it was worthwhile. If you have any questions, need any help, here are some places where you can contact me. As always, if it's a personal matter, please don't post it openly on social media. You can send me an email. You can also direct message me. If you're not already connected with me, feel free to, ask to connect with me, and then you can send me a private message. I'm happy to respond to them. If it's something within my scope of professional ability, I will. If it's outside of my scope, I will tell you and help you get connected to someone who can help you with that matter. Okay. And these will all be in the show notes, so don't have to, worry about even taking a screenshot. Okay. And here's the legal stuff, that I always have. So let's stop the share. Well, so that's the show for today. And as you know, starting last week, all of the Way to Wow shows are at 10 a.m. Pacific time now. That's 1 p.m. Eastern time. So tomorrow, Business Lessons from the Military, we'll be wrapping up our months-long discussion of Marine Corps warfighting doctrine as it applies to our professional lives. And then on Wednesday is People Making Money. And we're going to talk about some tasks that you want to consider now that we're here at the year end. So I thank you very much for joining me and hope to see you later this week. And just wrapping up, as I always do, Marie, you are my belle. All the best, folks.